Roaming with the Romans. The Roman Empire lasted for more than 700 years. At the peak of its glory, it was the largest empire in the known world. The empire covered much of Europe as well as parts of northern Africa and Asia. The Romans left many examples of their culture throughout the empire they built. Over the next 3 weeks, World History Social Studies Weekly will explore the ancient Roman Empire. The legend of the founding of Rome is as interesting as Rome itself. Twin brothers Romulus and Remus were the sons of a priestess and Mars, the Roman god of war. The brothers were set adrift on the Tiber River in Italy. Some versions of the story say their mom did this to protect them from people who wanted to hurt them. Other versions say their uncle, who wanted power, did this hoping the boys would drown. A female wolf rescued the boys and began to raise them as her own. Later, a shepherd found the twins and took them in. When Romulus and Remus got older, they decided to start a city. They fought over who would be the leader. Who do you think won? If you said Romulus, you're right. Can you see Rome in the name Romulus? He killed Remus in 753 BCE and became the leader. The city of Rome was born. The early people of Rome liked the location of the city. The nearby Tiber River provided water. The seven hills protected the city from enemy attacks. But other people liked the city's location too. Around 800 BCE, a group of people called the Etruscans conquered Latium, the region of Italy that included the city of Rome. The Etruscans had been influenced by the Greeks, and they shared the Greek culture with the people they conquered. The Romans adopted the Greek writing system, building techniques, and even their style of clothing, togas. The Etruscans also taught the Romans how to fight wars. The Romans were very good students, so good they were able to conquer the Etruscans and kick them out of their land more than 100 years later. The Roman civilization was beginning. Let's roam with the Romans to learn more about them and the empire they would create. Roman beach site found in Great Britain. Archaeologists have uncovered the area where Romans invaded Britain almost 2,000 years ago. What is called the Lost Beach was found 6 feet beneath the soil and 2 miles inland from where the shore once was located. Over the years, silt has accumulated in the sheltered lagoon area and created a new shoreline. The Roman fort of Richborough is the site of the 2008 discovery. The remains of the fort are located near Sandwich in Great Britain. Archaeologists made the discovery while digging near the remains of a Roman wall at the fort site. At the bottom of the trench, the archaeologists found that water continued to flow into the area. They kept digging. When they reached a hard surface, archaeologists realized they'd found an ancient beach. Historians say the Roman Emperor Claudius landed in Britain with his army of 50,000 men in 43 AD. This beach area was where the Romans would have walked onto shore as they invaded Britain so many years ago. Archaeologists have also found remains of Italian marble. The marble is thought to be from an arch built around 80 AD to celebrate the conquest of Britain. Broken pottery, Roman coins, leather, and wood were also found at the site. Richborough was also one of the last places abandoned by the Romans as they left England in the 5th century and was the site of one of the earliest Christian churches in England. Life in Rome, early government. After living under the harsh Etruscan rulers, the Romans decided they wanted a new form of government. They didn't want one leader to have too much power. So they set up a government called a republic. In a republic, the people have the power to choose leaders. To keep the power of the leaders in check, a group of citizens elected two leaders called consuls. The rich and powerful citizens who elected the leaders were called patricians. Ancient Romans were divided into three classes, and only the patricians had the right to participate in government. The plebeians, farmers, shopkeepers, and the poor, and slaves were the other two classes. Eventually, plebeians got a small say in government. This happened after the plebeians who had to pay taxes went on strike. They refused to fight in the army and threatened to leave and form their own city if they didn't get more say in the government. The rich patricians feared the plebeians would make good on their threat to leave. Who would do the work if the plebeians left? A few plebeians were finally allowed to participate in the government. Although they couldn't vote, plebeians could stand up and yell veto, meaning I say no, if they wanted to reject a decision made by the patrician leaders. Roman power grows. Carthage was a powerful city on the coast of North Africa. You may remember that it was a colony established by the Phoenicians. Carthaginians claimed they owned the Mediterranean Sea and threatened to sink Roman ships. The Carthaginians also wanted to control the island of Sicily. Rome and Carthage fought three long wars over who would control Sicily and the Mediterranean Sea. The wars were called the Punic Wars. Punic was the Latin word for the Phoenicians. The Romans won the first war in 241 BCE. Years later, a Carthaginian general named Hannibal, decided to invade Rome by land. Sailing with his troops to Spain, the army of about 46,000 climbed in over the Alps and into Italy. Hannibal brought along something never before seen in Europe: elephants. 37 elephants to be exact. Half of Hannibal's troops and most of the elephants died as they crossed the snowy Alps. He had hoped these animal tanks would help him in his efforts to conquer the city of Rome, but he failed. So the Carthaginians lost the Second Punic War, too. In 146 BC, during the last Punic War, Rome destroyed Carthage. To make sure the people of Carthage would never rise up again, the Romans burned Carthage to the ground and covered the farmland with salt. Rome was now the master of the Mediterranean Sea, and an empire was beginning. Religion. The ancient Romans were polytheistic. That means they worshipped many gods. They believed gods and goddesses controlled things in nature. The Romans also believed they could ask the gods and goddesses for advice about the future. They gave gifts to the gods in hopes that they'd protect the people and their city. The chief god was Jupiter, the sky god. Other gods included Mercury, the god of trade, Neptune, the god of the ocean, Pluto, the god of the dead, Apollo, god of the sun, Terra, goddess of the earth, and Venus, the goddess of love. As you can see, many of the planets were named for the gods of ancient Rome. Emperor Hadrian built the Pantheon to honor all the gods and goddesses. It took 7 years to build, beginning in 118 and ending in 125 AD. In 313 AD, a Roman emperor named Constantine converted to Christianity and made it the official religion of Rome. Latin. The language of Rome was Latin. Many modern languages evolved from Latin and are called Romance languages. The Romance languages include Spanish, Portuguese, French, Italian, and Romanian. Although English is not considered a Romance language, Latin has given thousands of words to the English language. Here are just a few: veto, index, auditorium, gymnasium, circus, arena, and stadium. Clothing. Because of the warm climate, people wore light clothing. Often, both men and women wrapped in large blanket like cloth around their bodies, leaving one arm free. Called a toga, this was usually worn for special occasions. Depending on your rank in Rome, you could wear one or more purple stripes on your toga. Foreigners and slaves were forbidden to wear togas. Everyday wear was usually a tunic. Women wore tunics that reached to the floor and had long sleeves. A woman's tunic was called a stola. Men didn't wear sleeves on their clothing in ancient Rome because wearing sleeves was not considered manly. Poorer people went barefoot, while wealthier people wore a cross between shoes and sandals. These were called calcei and were made of leather. Romans also wore open sandals, but wealthy Romans never wore sandals outside. Italy. Italy is on the continent of Europe and about the size of Arizona. Shaped like a giant boot, Italy is a peninsula, which means it has water on three sides. The bodies of water are the Adriatic Sea, the Tyrrhenian Sea, and the Mediterranean Sea. Italy borders the countries of Switzerland, Austria, France, and Slovenia. More than three-fourths of Italy is mountainous. The Apennine Mountains stretch down the center of the country, and the Alps are found in the north. For many years, the rugged Alps protected Italy from invasion from the north. There are also three major rivers in Italy. The Tiber River flows near the capital city of Rome. The Po River to the north is the country's longest and most important river. The Arno River is the third important river. Italy has three active volcanoes: Mount Etna, Mount Vesuvius, and Stromboli. The islands of Sicily are Sardinia are also part of Italy. Interestingly, there are two smaller countries inside the country of Italy. One is called San Marino, and the other is Vatican City. Vatican City, located in the center of Rome, is the smallest independent state in the world. Julius Caesar. After the Punic Wars, Rome became more and more powerful. With more land to control in a time before modern communication, leaders began fighting for power. Julius Caesar was a consul who became a dictator during Rome's civil war. Back then, the word dictator didn't mean what it does today. It was the title for a consul who assumed power in times of war. Hoping Caesar would bring peace to Rome, the government leaders made Caesar dictator for life. With this decision, the Roman Republic came to an end. During his rule, Caesar did many good things. He helped the poor by forgiving their debt. He gave land to farmers, replaced dishonest leaders, and built roads and buildings. Caesar also gave citizenship to the people conquered by the Romans. He improved the calendar, making it more like the one we use today. It was called the Julian calendar. The month of July was named for Caesar, and he actually wrote a poem to remember the months of the year. It started with 30 days has September, April, June, and November. After conquering Egypt, Caesar returned to Rome with a variety of animals to show the Roman citizens. His zoo included a giraffe, the first one ever seen in Europe. Rich patricians were jealous of Caesar's power. They believed he was becoming too powerful, and they worried that he wanted to be king. A group of patricians decided to kill Caesar. On March 15th, called the Ides or Middle of March, Caesar was stabbed to death by members of the Roman Senate. One of those involved in his death was his friend Brutus. Following Caesar's death in 44 BC, Rome again faced civil war. Eventually, Caesar's grandnephew, Octavian, came to power. Aqueducts. Today, if you need water, you turn on the faucet. But back in ancient times, people got their water from nearby rivers, usually by carrying it to their homes. As Rome grew, More and more raw sewage went into the Tiber River, and people got sick from its polluted waters. They needed a clean source of water, so they began building aqueducts. An aqueduct is a channel that carries water from one place to another. Historians say the Assyrians built the first recorded aqueduct in the ancient city of Nineveh in about 691 BCE. Although the Greeks, Egyptians, Indians, and ancient Persians also built aqueducts, the Romans became famous for this feat of engineering. The word aqueducts comes from two Latin words, aqua, meaning water, and ductus, meaning to lead. Long stone channels carried water from streams in nearby mountains and hills to public fountains, public baths, and to a few wealthy patricians' homes. The first Roman aqueduct, the Aqua Appia, was built in 312 BC. Over time, the ancient Romans built 11 aqueducts to supply an ever growing population with clean water. Much of the system, which used the force of gravity to move the water, was underground. This made it safer from enemies who might try to poison the water supply. These underground tunnels were mostly made of stone, but sometimes the Romans used leather, lead, bronze, wood, and terracotta piping. Some of the ancient Roman aqueducts are still in use. Wonderful examples of Roman style aqueducts can also be found today in Nimes, France, called the Pont du Gard, and in Segovia, Spain.